Welcome to Panelism, a podcast where we talk about the comics and graphic novels worth having on your shelf. I'm Taylor Trask.
I'm Tade.
And I'm very caffeinated. We just, for those of you playing the home game, we just recorded an episode of Todd's pick, and now if you're listening, this will be the next one, hopefully, and it's my pick. Todd, real quick, just, I guess, preview that. What you talked about, which book?
I talked about
Dominoes.
By Gail Simone. Yeah.
So go check out that episode. In my episode that you're listening to, I'm going to talk about a little book called Local.
Wow, we're jumping right into it. There's no caffeine.
Right
we're already caffeinated.
We're ready to go.
Missed that update. My gunpowder green tea is now cold. I've stopped drinking it. You've probably finished your coffee.
And I don't need any more coffee, as you'll probably hear. I'm a little excited. No, yeah, we're going to jump right into it. Please go back, listen to the Domino episode, because we record, for those of you listening, we record these back-to-back on the same morning, typically. So this will be following Todd's episode.
Yeah, I'm trying to like, not necessarily pump the brakes, but like, let's take a breath,
all right.
Breathe in the funk, push out the jive.
Yeah. Okay, so you're on your way to the local comic store today, and you're thinking to yourself, what book should I pick up? And I'm going to tell you, folks, the book you want. The book you want in your shelf this week is a little book called Local by Brian Wood and Ryan Kelly. No, it's it is a one of my favorite graphic novels. And it's written by Brian Wood, illustrated by Ryan Kelly, beautifully illustrated. I'll get into that in a second, and published by Oni Press. Oni, if you don't know, is a Portland-based publisher. They do a lot of cool stuff. I think I've talked about an Oni book or two in the past. If not, I surely will soon, because there's a lot of good output from there. And it's worth noting too, and I kind of highlighted this a little bit when we were talking about Domino. A lot of the creators coming out of Portland tend to reference Portland a lot in their work, and it's not that that's a bad thing. It's just an interesting observation. You don't really see that a lot, maybe other than Stan Lee writing about New York City, and Jack Kirby and those guys at the time. That's kind of the only other sort of reference where the creators reference their world. Portland, Oregon, and just the Pacific Northwest seems to be a recurring character. I refer to you all to the book Stumptown, which is literally a mystery book about Portland. Fantastic little book. I think that's in its third volume too.
Oh, but that's a ongoing series.
I think so. We'll talk about that on another episode. I haven't read it, so I don't want to speak too deeply about it. But Local, great little graphic novel. It came out in single issues between 2005 and 2008. But I really highly recommend this be consumed as one collected volume. It's odd that it did come out as single issues in the beginning, because that just wouldn't be as enjoyable. You have to read this start to finish. Hardcover edition is what I have, and I've got it doesn't say like expanded edition or anything, but it's got a lot of really good DVD extras in the back, interviews, essays, concept art. A lot of good framing, very similar to when we reviewed Vision. A lot of the same, depth of examination of the work, and you feel like you really get a sense of the piece afterwards, which is important. Oh, go ahead.
Not to jump too far ahead, but you have a hardback. Has this been recently revisited and republished to memorialize all that, or?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I was kind of looking that up earlier. This was actually given to me as a Christmas gift last year. The published date on this is the first edition is September 2008. So it looks like this came out as the official, collected graphic novel. I'm sorry, this is also 2013. So this particular version came out in 2013, but I think this is the official graphic novel. And it just, collected all the single issues. It almost seems like this is what they were aiming for to begin with, and they just had to go through the motions of releasing single issues. It's all black and white. I'll get more into that in just a second. And it follows 12 interconnected, rather emotional vignettes of a teenage vagabond named Megan. She sets out from Portland with nothing but a rucksack and a bad case of wanderlust. Reading that from the back of the book. And each sort of vignette was a single issue, but it's all collected in this volume. Like most of these, I'm going to start with the story first. This is a highly indie pick, in case it wasn't obvious. And it's like most of the graphic novels I gravitate to. feels like a fantastic short film. Has that sort of quality and vibe to it. Very, the panels look very much like storyboards for a movie, especially because it's all black and white. So you kind of have that storyboard kind of feel to it. And when you first pop it open and you read it, every vignette is centered on Megan's journey as she kind of wanders across the country, and each story is in a different city. So the first one is Portland, and then it's I think she gets up to Canada. I think she's in Minnesota at some point. Goes on from there. So when you first sorry, hang on here. When you first start it, it almost feels like I was thrown for a second, because the first story is her Portland story, and it's kind of reminiscent of a Pulp Fiction story. Kind of has sort of like, ooh, wow, this is exciting and interesting, and you almost kind of feel like they were going to do that, 48 hours earlier motif.
Oh, right, yeah.
And after it kind of became clear that wasn't the case, I thought, oh shoot, am I reading sort of alternate versions of the same event? Because you go into the next story and it kind of eerily connects to the first one, but it's different, and it wasn't quite clear what they were going for. But it's important to know that this is a linear telling of her journey, just with a lot. It's jumping forward in time a lot. So it's not a pair. Oh, what? Go ahead.
So you mean in linear, it's like every issue follows on to the last one.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like, one might be a week later. The next one might be 5 months later.
Gotcha.
Not too much time passes between, but I bring that up because it was a little confusing to me at first to kind of know where they were heading with it. I kind of thought this might be a little more fantastical. It's not. It is very much a grounded, very sort of emotional story about this girl and her journey. For example, I just pulled it up. I'm going to give you a couple of the chapter titles and kind of where they exist. The first one is 10,000 Thoughts Per Second, and that's the Portland, Oregon first story. Then there's Polaroid Boyfriend, that takes place in Minneapolis. There's one called Hazardous Youth, that takes place in Tempe, Arizona. Bar Crawl, Austin, Texas. And then the last chapter is called The House That Megan Built, that takes place in Vermont. So it kind of follows her journey through self-discovery. It's not quite clear how old she is. I'm assuming late teens, early 20s. And she's just trying to figure herself out. And it's interesting. I know a lot of people like this. A lot of young women or girls like this, where they just kind of feel trapped in this life that they either it has been created for them or that they can't seem to escape. And the only thing they can really do is just to get out there, just not run away so much as just travel, just get out, see things, make mistakes, try to figure out who they are in this world. Where's it going with this? It's the best depiction of confusion of a young woman that I've ever seen. And I know you're going to have people, you're going to read it and go, oh my God, I went to high school with a girl like this, or I know somebody like this, or my cousin is somebody like this. It's pretty profound that way. Well,
that brings a question to my mind, which is, as real and literal and linear as this, I mean, my question is about the literalness of it. Are these places meant to represent like sort of different sides of her character? Is it not even metaphor? It's just literal, like she visits these places and learns something about herself in every place?
I think a little of both. I think like in real life, you're shaped by your environment, whether you want it to or not. And that definitely is at play. I think if there is metaphor or symbolism, it's subtle enough where it doesn't get in the way. It doesn't feel like, for example, there's one called Food as Substitute. It takes place in Wicker Park, Chicago. That setting is a beautiful setting piece for that particular kind of story. I don't think you could do that story as well in Missoula, Montana, where another story occurs.
Right.
So they pick the settings very specifically to sort of highlight the features of that particular story. And to your point, reinforces her mindset or her evolution as a character at any given time. It is worth noting, though, that each story sort of no story is like what you've seen before. They're all very specifically designed to keep you engaged, to show you another slice of her life. And where's it going with that? I'm so sorry. I'm trying to there's so much to kind of keep track. it does take you on her. You do pieces of each story do follow through to the end, because that ending story really ties it all together. You get a sense of having gone with her on these journeys. You feel like where she is and where she concludes the book. It's very definitive. She ends the book in a very sort of like final kind of way. She didn't die. It's not it. But like her emotional journey does come to an end in a very satisfying sort of, conclusive way. And you feel that having seen her through all these different kind of ups and downs and, the monotony of the journey and the excitement of the journey. People she meets, how she sees the world through these relationships she has, through these, at one point she's needing, she falls in with a guy who's potentially going to rob a diner, and you're like, what's that about? So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. The art is really worth mentioning. It's beautiful black and white illustrations. It's over 300 pages. So if they even wanted to color it, that would be a huge undertaking. I'm glad they didn't. Right away, the beauty of the black and white is specific enough that you don't need the color. I think too, it's worth seeing the world that she goes through in this mindset. Not that black and white means, the world is black and white, but it's just, you pay more attention to the characters and the settings when there's no color than you would have otherwise. Like you're a little more tuned in, I think, when there's no color in this case. And
it looks incredibly detailed. Like I'm scanning the art, it's not, a comic we did on the show that was all black and white was Punk Rock Jesus, which was very, very heavily black, like almost this manga feel of, just like a Xerox newsprint kind of thing. But this is like intricately detailed. I'm looking at this one where it's like the paneling on the wall is drawn,
Well, and that was, I was going to mention that before. So they meticulously researched all of the cities where these stories occur. So when you see Austin, the buildings, the architecture, actual things that exist in Austin are there. When you see Missoula, like the Missoula, Montana story opens up with her driving on this highway, and you see, and I'm almost certain that highway, that picture exists in the real life, and they replicated it. So there's a lot of research at play here. And I think if you've been to, or if you live in any of these places or you know them, you'll be impressed and satisfied with the depiction of them. And just the way they draw characters, every panel is considered. It's not like there's throwaway panels just to get you through. It's every single panel was really thought through. So it is like a storyboard, but with incredible amount of detail, put in. And Ryan Kelly just does a phenomenal job. I need to go and find out what else he's done, because I'm sure I've seen other work, and he's just wonderful. They do have in the DVD extra section, they do have the covers that accompanied each issue, and those covers are colored. So it's the same illustration, but you see the color, and you kind of get a sense of what the color would be, and it's beautiful. But it's just not necessary. We don't need it on every page. Like it would almost be, dare I say, it would be almost be overwhelming if every page and every panel was colored. I think, you need it to be black and white to appreciate the simplicity, the beauty of the illustrations, but also really get kind of tied into the story a little bit deeper. And usually, I'm kind of a stickler about black and white. I think just as a default, you shouldn't just go there just to go there, or because you can't afford to do color. If it satisfies the story, great. And this is definitely a case where that happens. I think it also, the black and white nature of it makes it probably one of my favorite 2 or 3 rainy day books, or snow day books, where you're stuck in the house, it's cold outside, you just want to sort of get into a really good story start to finish. This is definitely one of those books for that purpose. For sure. I don't want to say too much more about the story, because each vignette is very specific to draw out thoughts, insights into her character. You kind of see some of yourself in her as it goes on, which I'm sure is necessary. So I don't want to spoil too much. That they're all fantastic. There wasn't a single vignette that was like, oh, that was that's the weak one. Clearly they ran out of steam here. They're all incredibly strong, which is why you kind of need the collected volume, because you'll want to see how this journey progresses. I couldn't imagine reading this 1 month at a time. With a significant amount of space between each reading. You kind of need it start to finish. It really is a novel in that respect. Probably one of the truest graphic novels that really does lean on the novel side of it, and the way it's structured, in the way the story's told, the way the character is developed, and all that.
Well,
good stuff.
You initially confused me when you were calling it a graphic novel, because my research consisted of typing a local Brian Wood into Wikipedia. And where it's, leans heavily on it being like a limited series, and it's 12 issues. And so I was thinking like, well, it's, it's more like a trade paperback kind of thing where they've just compiled it. But then with the 12 issues, I also thought, well, that's more issues than normal. Does that mean they were shorter? I almost had in my mind, like putting these elements together, like Oni Press, black and white, 12 issues. I almost had in my mind, like, they're going to be like mini comics, like very vignette-ish. But to hear you say that it's over 300 pages in this collected hardbound edition no, you're right. Like, this is a graphic novel presented in 12 chapters. I don't, and especially now that I'm like, have searched through the art and stuff like that. I'm with you. I don't see any other way. Like, I wouldn't want to have these single issues. This hardbound cover looks amazing.
I mean, unless you're just a completist and you want to collect the single issues just because you love it so much, fine. But don't read it that way. Don't one shot it. I would say, I would add to this too. If you are looking for a book that really authentically fleshes out what it's like to be a lost young woman trying to find her place in the world, this is it. And it's interesting because, it was written by a man and that doesn't always connect very well. And in this case, it connects beautifully. Like, he really figures, he must have known a lot of women like this too, because he nails a lot of the things that I'm like, oh my God, I know exactly who this person is. I have met this person before. It's fascinating because, like, oftentimes you have these people in your lives. You're like, man, what are they thinking? What are they going through? What's their journey like? And you almost get to see that through this and kind of understand those people even better. But it really does. It's, she's never a victim, but she's never like so full of agency that, everything goes well for her. It is a true raw look at what it's like to just go off and sort of wander the country and, she gets a job, here and there, and then that goes poorly. And so she has to move on. And there's kind of a Bruce Banner-esque aspect to this, not in an adventure-y kind of way, but you're just that kind of that lonely wanderer.
David Banner, probably.
David Banner. Was it David Banner in the series?
Yeah.
Oh my God, how did I forget that? I used to love the Hulk series. Wow. Okay, so the David Banner. But you almost like, no joke, like at the end of some of these chapters, you almost kind of hear that that Hulk piano sound playing as she walks away. You're just like, oh no. And so you want to see the next chapter. Like, where does she wind up next? And again, it could be a couple days later, it could be a couple months later. You never know kind of where they're going to drop you in next or why. And they don't spend a lot of time, explaining how she got from point A to point B. It's just you sort of, you're along for the ride. You're like, well, clearly at some point she must have jumped in, or she met a friend who brought her here. That's not important. It's important that they highlight these specific aspects of her journey.
Are there like milestones from her life in terms of, does she talk about graduating from high school at a certain time? Do you get a feeling, like you had sort of said, she's late teens, early 20s. I'm wondering if it's one of those movies where it's like, where there's a real landmark event, like there's a graduation in her recent past and she's hitting the road because she doesn't know what to do next, or, parents got divorced or something in this year. And
that becomes clear so you learn a lot more about those things in the last chapter. It's not necessarily a spoiler. The last chapter is her confronting her relationship with her mother. And it is, and by the time she gets there, it's like her coming home to do that. It has so much more weight when you see everything she's been through, and you get to see from her point of view, like justifiably or non-justifiably her decisions and how that plays into that relationship and how her mother views her or didn't view her. And I don't want to say too much because there's a couple spoilery things in there too, but the book starts off with her in a car, and they're about to go rob a pharmacy, or they're about to go, so it's like, it's not like, she starts off and she's in her home and you see her running away. Like, she's on the road right away, and it's like, bang, and you're dropped in, which is why that it was a little disorienting, because you're like, whoa, is this is this like Pulp Fiction? Are we going to like come back to this? Is, you know, what? And it's not that. And I say that, I stress that because I don't want people to think as they're reading this, that's where it's going. It's more satisfying when you know this is just, these are linear vignettes, and then you can appreciate it for that. Because I'd actually go back and reread chapters 1 and 2 after I figured out, oh, this is not like a Quentin Tarantino movie. This is
right.
Coming of age story. I would say, you know, if you like the movie Nebraska, you know, the indie film from a couple of years ago with Will Forte and Bruce Dern, like this is very much kind of in that vein. You know, it's a little fun. It's there's some comedy, but there's a lot of drama too. And it happens to be black and white as well. So Nebraska, the movie or the film, is great. Also, if you like, oh shoot, I just had it. I apologize, I just had it in here. The movie, the other graphic novel, The Sculptor by Scott McCloud. That also is probably a really, like, if you really like that aesthetic, you like that sort of not that The Sculptor's coming of age, but it has a really clear development of the main character that, you know, you see over a lot of pages. That's a thick book too. Just as satisfying, very much a true representation of the graphic novel format. But those two things, and then, you know, other indie movies like, you know, God, I'll even throw Clerks in there. Just any coming of age indie movie. If you like those, this is a really good version of that, just in graphic novel form.
Well, and you know, your description of it does seem a little bit different than Wikipedia's description, which makes it seem much more vignette-ish. So if you find a book description of this that seems like it's not a totally connected story, I would say disregard that, because it sounds like not necessarily that it's connected, but it resolves.
The vignettes are strong enough on their own. We're like, let's just say you only were given issue 5. You know, the issue 5 is titled, or chapter 5 in this case is titled, "The Last 10 Lonely Days at the Oxford Theatre." It takes place in Halifax, Nova Scotia. If you were just given that, you could read that and be like, oh, what a great little mini comic. Yeah, but when you see it in context with the other vignettes, it all fits together. You get a sense of her personality from one to the other, and you're like, oh no, Megan, you made this decision before. Don't make it again. Like that kind of, you get a sense of that. So the through line is way stronger than I think Wikipedia might make it. But they're right. Each vignette does really kind of stand on its own. But it's not like, you know, this isn't Quentin Tarantino is a great example. This isn't like these stories are so specific that, you know, like a character from one might appear in the other, and, you know, it's a little sort of Easter egg. It's not like that. It's very much just different fast forwarding chapters of her life that stand on their own, but you want to consume as one cohesive piece.
Well, and when you had mentioned like black and white indie movies and the description from, you know, that I had read, I was thinking of Slackers, where it's like we follow one set of characters for a while, and then when all of a sudden we follow another set and we're waiting for him to meet, and it never really happens. And so I didn't really know how.
It's definitely not like that.
Yeah,
no, it's not like that.
So one more question: is it specific to a year or a decade or an era or something, or does it kind of work whatever you imagine the era to be?
That's a great question. It does kind of have a timeless quality to it, because when you're on the road and you have just a rucksack with you, like there's only so much you can take with you. You can't really afford, you know, a cell phone bill necessarily, or all these other sort of modern accoutrements like those. So you're not like there's not like a lot of heavy-handed technology. She's spending a lot of her time in sort of, you know, rundown apartments or diners or things that this could have easily been a story set in the 50s as it was in 2005. You know, there's not just the off the grid sort of feeling of it, I think, can make it really kind of universal in America, you know, I would say from the 1950s onward. And I could see that, you know, this was 10 years ago almost. Now, so I could easily see this story happening literally while we're talking. Like this girl could be in Manitou Springs right now having one of these vignettes occur. So I really like that. I mean, I think it was meant to be, you know, the places depicted and the scenes and, you know, all the detail, I think was meant to represent the world as it was circa 2005, 2008.
Right.
But it doesn't feel dated in that way.
Well, and it's still, this is a strange observation maybe, but it's still 2005 to 2008 is still pre-smartphone ubiquity, which almost feels like, like ancient times. So, I mean, that totally changes the way we see a story now where, it's I've heard this observation from other people of how many movies plots could now be ruined if they remade it and people had cell phones, where you can just call the person on the plane and say, this is gonna, you don't understand I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Die Hard 2 for some reason. You're gonna have to land at another airport. You'll never be able to land here.
Well, but there's I'm flipping through as you say that. There's a page where somebody calls her and she's got an old school answering machine, answering message machine. And where you press the button, you press erase. And at the same time you go, well, I know a bunch of hipsters now who have those. And just the way she's kind of leading her life, the aesthetic is sort of, kind of an indie hipstery kind of quality to it. So it doesn't really feel like, oh, well, that's clearly never going to happen again. It just sort of works, It's
it's always the 90s in Portland.
There's something to that. I mean, we talked about that in your episode too, that may be one of those things that just kind of, because you're surrounded by this in Portland, even 10 years ago, it sort of works. It's just the nature of it. But I highly recommend this. For anybody who listens regularly, I'm a sucker for good, female coming of age stories, especially when they're done really, really well. This is definitely one of those. Pardon me. There's a just one more thing. There's a lot of tangible aspects to it. A lot of Polaroid photos. It works. It really works. If you like Nebraska, even if you do, I'll backtrack a little bit. Even if you do like sort of the vignette storytelling nature of Tarantino movies, this does not get, nobody's blowing away somebody else just for the fun of it. Nobody's opening up a briefcase with gold, some gold shiny thing in it. Nothing like that, but just the nature of those stories, kind of how they interrelate and how they should sort of show the growth of a character at key moments. I think you'll like that. And then again, just great indie book just to have on your shelf. I'm so proud to have this one. It's one I'm going to come back to probably and reread every year and take something new from it.
Yeah, it looks awesome. So once again, you have burdened my TBR list. Whenever I break up myself away from sci-fi and superheroes, I have my work cut out for me. A lot of stuff.
Oh, and real quick too, digital versus physical. I think this could easily go both ways.
Really?
And that's surprising to hear. To maybe hear that. I have the physical version, and it's great. As a collectible edition, I'm glad I do. But the nature of the panels is such that you would have, it would probably feel more cinematic if you could look at each panel one by one. There are certain vignettes, certain stories where you don't necessarily want to have, the page open right next to you and kind of see where it's going. It would almost serve you better in some ways to have the single panel view, but that doesn't take anything away from the physical version either. So if you're interested and you're like, I don't want to invest in another thing sitting on my shelf, grab the digital. I think you'll be just as happy, especially because a lot of the illustrations, it's so sharp. The black and white is so sharp that it would play really, really nicely on a digital screen too.
Well, that's really interesting. I like to think of those big, black and white graphic novels like, I'm thinking of Yoshihiro Tatsumi as a couple that I really like, that like sort of old manga looking ones that are very stark black and white. And then what's that one I just reviewed? Mary Wept over the feet of Jesus. I can't remember the author, but it just, I don't know, something about that black and white format makes me want to be holding a big physical book. So that's interesting to note, but I get that, maybe there's, maybe you don't want to be spoiled by those panels ahead. So, and black and white always looks great on a screen, really.
It does, really, and it's done really well. Again, it's just so sharp. Ryan Kelly just did such a guy. I don't know how long it must have taken them forever. To do these, because even like there's splash pages. There's like a later on towards the last chapter, there's a beautiful 2-page kind of splash page of her sitting at a table at her old house, and it's just that picture. No words, no thought balloons, no word balloons or anything, like no lettering, just her sitting there. It's beautiful. Like that, it says everything that you want it to say. And there's so many panels like that, just really well considered, great detail, great character design. Yeah, pick it up.
Very cool. You've outclassed me once again.
No.
Well, whenever you, the listener, that is, would like more comics to read, more picks, find us on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, any place podcasts can be listened to and or downloaded, however you want to do it. We are, as you surely know by now, our name is Panelism. We're the only Panelism out there. You can find us on Instagram at panelism.inc. And that is also a new domain name. So we are also panelism.inc. You can just type that into a web browser and go to our website. So please subscribe. We hear that it's good to encourage people to review us. We don't know any of the benefits or negative benefits of that, whatever the negative benefits are. Suboptimal benefits. I don't know.
There you go.
Anyway, we don't know what happens. So it would be great if you reviewed us, but if you don't have anything good to say, that's fine too. And also share us with your friends, and we will catch you next week for more picks. See you later.
Bye-bye.